So I've been looking online and I've discovered the Asus TUF Gaming A15, also known as an FX or FA506, to replace the FX505. So the laptop itself does look fairly similar. The keyboard itself is extremely similar. But if we scroll down, it's now supporting a Ryzen 4000 chip, as opposed to the 3750H, I believe, the 3000 Ryzen chips, which themselves weren't that crash hot. But this is now using Zen 2, and it's considerably faster. It tops out with an RTX 2060, but looking at it, it's also now got a 144Hz panel as opposed to the 120 that they did have. And it's also, if you buy the budget version, it contains a GTX 1650 Ti, or potentially just a 1650. Looking at, take no notice of it, they're both virtually identical. I'm expecting performance difference of less than 5%, potentially even lower. The biggest thing it would come down to is if you have a GDDR hungry game, then the Ti will be slightly better. Anyway, there's two variants of it. There's the 4800H and the 4600H. Personally, I'm going to be looking towards the 4600H, as I've spotted on eBay, which this is in AUD, not US dollars. But if I bounce back to here, the biggest thing I've noticed, that's the older version, which if we actually go down to here, it will show me the keyboard. No. The keyboard design, if you look on the left hand side here and compare it with here we go. The keyboard design, look here, compare it. The keyboard layout looks identical, so more than likely it's the same style of keyboard. The chassis itself is probably identical as well, especially going by the cutouts and just the various angles. So to me, it was virtually the same machine with a performance upgrade. But as we can see, they can definitely range in price. Starting around the $1,500 mark for an R5 4600, 8GB, 512GB, GTX 1650 or Ti, ranging up into a 4900H, 16GB of RAM and an RTX 2060, as seen up here. But one thing that did have me slightly confused was looking at the Australian sites, is the back cover. I'm yet to see this in any of the YouTube reviews, this style of back cover. All the other ones that I've seen, which now that I've noticed here, has just a single steel plate on the back. There we go. Which personally, just going by the photos online, I much rather the mesh black brushed plastic aluminium look compared to the riveted on flat piece of metal. Assumably it's going to be plastic as well. That did leave me slightly confused. I was actually under the impression that there might have been two slightly different revisions of this same machine, or there was the TUF Gaming A5 and then there was the TUF Gaming FA506. But from my findings, they do look to be identical. Performance-wise, if we compare the, well, this is not overly great information, but it is some. The 1650 versus the Ti version, there seems to be almost an extremely minor difference at all in performance. But the biggest thing that I was looking forward to, if I can find my information now, is comparing the Ryzen 5 to the Core i5. Which here we've got the 9300H versus the 4600H. Base clock, 2.4 versus 3. Turbo, all cores, 3.4 GHz versus 4 GHz. And then we've also got 4 cores versus 6. Same level of cache. Which in my mind would lead me to believe that this would be a considerably quicker processor. And also looking under the technology, 14nm versus 7nm, so it's going to sit that battery a little bit better. I did look at a comparison of the 4600 versus the Ryzen, the i7 9750, I believe it was off the top of my head, where it was a 6-core versus 6-core. The Intel did seem to be slightly in front with cache, as it was 12 meg of cache versus 8, but overall a pretty close comparison. So looking online, most of the reviews for this particular model seem to be rather decent. Where are we? The screen itself does look to be a little bit dim, but apparently better than the FX 505. Lacks biometrics, all metal build, which is something you can definitely absorb. One disappointing thing is it does not contain an SD card reader, and also the base model of the laptops, i.e. the ones I've been looking at, only contain a 48-hour 3-cell battery versus, I believe, a 90-watt-hour 6-cell battery. So a considerable difference in battery performance. So also looking at the internals of them, if I can find my photos. So here we've got the Ryzen 5, I'll just call it the 506. And here we have the 505. As you can see, if you ignore the color of the lighting, slightly different frame on the screen, which one thing I was looking at that I don't like is if you look around the top border or bezel on the outer sides, we've got black. If you have a look here, we have red. Personally, I'm not overly a fan of a color, I'd just rather it be all black. But proceeding along, so this seems to be the back cover of most of the US versions of this laptop. So we have the back cover of the US version. We have the older 505, which to me I never really enjoyed that one. And here we have the 506 AU version, or potentially other regions as well. I'm curious to see if this section here is just a texture or if it's mesh. I'll be leaning towards the texture at this point. And internally, we've got the 506 on the left here, and I believe the FA706 may be an Intel variety. But looking at it as well, you can see one other major difference there, which I believe looks to be, or would be the battery. On the lower end models of the 506, there's the 48-hour watt battery. As we can see, 90 watt. And I believe there'll be a hard drive tray. I'll be thinking it'll almost be located on this lower right hand section. Well, that'll be my speculation. Mainly also because there's HDD here. I'm imagining a flex cable will go across, go down, and go to a 2.5 inch tray, which will be handy for some, not so much for others. The cooling I do enjoy, especially with this extra additional heat pipe over the side here. I'd be assuming that that would be potentially for the... No, I'm actually going to speculate what I think that might be. I'm going to lean towards the graphics side of things, but it potentially may be towards the processor, but the processor being a lower architecture or nanometer than the graphics card, I'd probably assume this would be the graphics card here. From a repair standpoint, I'm assuming in the center here would be 2 DIMM slots. We can actually see one of the sticks of RAM there, and there'll be another one under here. So there'll be 2 upgradable RAM slots on there, removable PSU or AC jack. Over here would have the M.2. Looks like a potential spot for another one down the bottom right hand side here. This may be a feature only on the higher end models, I'm not too sure. But overall I do like the upgrade path that this potentially may offer. Proceeding on, we have the back cover here. The back doesn't overly impress me. I do wish that these particular honeycomb effects would have a bit more ventilation to them. You can see that they've got it in a little bit. Then they've got the umbrella logo. Not sure what that's in reference to, but we'll go for it. So the cooling side of it, I still believe something like the GL65 would have better under machine cooling and ventilation, being that seems to be mostly mesh. But this compared to the older model of the 505, it's pretty much on par with one another. So in summary, are these good value for money? If you're looking at the earlier model of the 505 and you're seeing that the 506 for a very similar price, I do believe you'll be getting a considerably better performance increase using it or purchasing the newer one, especially on the CPU side of things. The graphics side of things is not really that much of an improvement, but there may be potentially less thermal throttling because of the lower wattage or the more efficient CPU, which can then run at a higher frequency without heat soaking the heat pipes. I have been reading regarding the cooling side of things that they do get rather hot, that the 4000 series typically can run up to about 90 degrees Celsius, which seems to be on par with the 9 series of the Intel chips. And I don't believe that the 10 series is really going to change it too much, being it's the same architecture, same nanometer. So currently I am debating whether or not to actually get one of these. The 144 Hz does have me excited. The Ryzen chip has me excited. The GTX 1650 Ti does not. But I believe if this was priced potentially about another $100 less, maybe $200 on special, I would be jumping at that for sure. If this was popping up for around about $1,200 or $1,000 on special Australian, yeah, I'd be jumping at this machine pretty much straight away for a very simple gaming light VR machine. And if the 2060 version of this came up for around about $1,500 to $1,600, would probably also be worthwhile. One thing I do find that this machine does do a lot better is beat the MSI Alpha 15, which was an all AMD machine. The biggest dilemma with it was that the processor was too underpowered and the price of it was asking way too much. So I am looking forward to a revision of this model. As you can see here, Ryzen 7 3000 series, 3000, Ryzen 7H processor. So I am curious if that's being revised to have the 4000 series in it. I don't see why it wouldn't. But when these came out, if I jump back to eBay and just type in MSI Alpha, here we go. MSI Alpha, RX 5500M, Ryzen 7 3750H, which is only really comparable to a i5 9300H. So you're paying more and getting less essentially with these ones, especially when you'll be able to go to the Asus TUF, get a considerably more powerful processor, slightly better screen for $100, $200 less. So anyway, let me know what you think about these. Should I go down the path of checking one out? I'm still on the fence. Currently I got rid of my Dell G3, so there is a little bit of money sitting there to try out a new laptop, and this is currently where my eyes are going towards. But I'm curious to see what's going to come out in the next probably month regarding other brands that are also going to be using the R5 4600 and 4800, 4900. So I'm not sure whether or not to bite the bullet just yet. Anyway, that will do for today's video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.